This is my 2026 presentation portfolio. My name is Scott Moffat. In this presentation, I'll cover approach and process, visualizations and infographics, motion and storytelling, and share a little bit about myself. Everything I design is grounded in what is the optimal user experience for those involved, who is the speaker, the audience, and the person that may have to update this deck next. I begin with listening, asking questions, and rapidly sketching ideas that I can get feedback on and iterate. I work with whatever brand assets are available to develop an experience that honors your brand while respecting your content's needs. As I design, I keep in mind who the deck is for and how it is to be used. Will it be a visual punctuation displayed on a giant screen for a speaker? Will it be a walking deck emailed to colleagues to socialize the message? Or will it be a project document recording progress and asks? My design process also takes into account accessibility, diversity, inclusion, geopolitical, and business liability considerations, so that you can stand before your audience confident and authentic in your messaging. My visualizations consider the whole of the information being communicated, and then focus on the critical parts that lead to understanding and appreciation. I use empathy to look at both sides of the table. What are the key takeaways the presenter is responsible for communicating? What are the barriers to understanding the audience is facing? As often as possible, I work with a subject matter expert, whether that's the presenter themselves or a specialist in that domain, such as a security architect, a product designer, or a systems engineer, to gain clarity on the uniqueness of the solution, the differentiators, and the value of the whole solution coming from the sum of its parts. In a maze of information, I find that critical path that leverages industry understanding to land the aha moment for the audience, and to land it quickly and efficiently without distracting from the presenter's voice. I use motion strategically to enhance my clients' presentations. Subtle movement that tells a story rather than motion for motion's sake. Good motion design demonstrates a concept, whether a transition or a transformation, and should never get in the way of the deck's accessibility. The slide should stand on its own with motion disabled and be readable in its static form. For decks that begin with motion by design, I use storyboarding to rapidly iterate a few concepts to go over with the clients. Once we've agreed on an approach, I move to realizing that design in PowerPoint, iterating rapidly as the content evolves. A little bit about me. My background as both a user experience designer and as a technical writer enable me to approach my clients' projects with empathy, looking for solutions that feel natural to the audience and are easy to maintain for the presenter. I love well-crafted stories from film and television, analyzing the elements, techniques, and design intent that go into producing visuals that immerse the viewer, and this inspires my designs. When I'm not solving your visual communications challenges, I enjoy spending time outdoors with my family hiking, cycling, skiing, paddling, snorkeling, and taking photos. My favorite places to travel are to the UK, France, Ireland, Hawaii, and North America, and with a growing bucket list to visit more destinations around the world. I also enjoy cooking and baking bread for my family and friends, as well as making a new recipe, which is the closest I'll ever get to real alchemy. You can get a hold of me at scottmo@outlook.com and text me at 206-931-3822 and at scottmoffat on linkedin.com, and you can check out some of my travel photography and art photography on Instagram at instagram.com/rsmoffat. Now for some visualization and infographic samples. Alternates. It's not uncommon for me to draft a few alternates to give you a choice. Here, this client had to land a novel workflow to their customer that introduced new concepts as well as a new workflow. The design on the left was an on-brand refresh of what they already had, but prior feedback had indicated that it led to more questions than understanding. So I drafted the center and right designs which emphasized flow while defining the relationships between technologies. Percentages. When comparing large sets of numbers and then percentages of numbers, you need a visual that instantly communicates the difference between those number sets. This is easy if the sets have the same base number as the one on the left, 64 days. But when you have a unique base number for each, it's not a graph that a spreadsheet table can generate automatically and make sense. Such is the case with the slide on the right. In this case, the client needed to let 9 locations know if they had made their 20% registration goals. The catch being that each location had a different size population, and therefore 20% relative to that population looks different. I solved this by setting the base as 100% rather than the population itself, and then indicating the percent progress towards goal. Elevations. When comparing many metrics, elevations are a useful technique to visually describe depth, concentration, or achievement. The slide on the left illustrates the percentage of tickets managed through a 5-step progression. The center slide visually describes the level of involvement of the client's team according to a severity of the threat. The right side tells a story from foundational work through to realized objectives. Change over time. Oftentimes, my clients want to land a message related to where their customers are in their journey, whether it's a dire position of where you are now, as seen on the left side, or the position they could be in by adopting the recommended approach of my client, as seen on the right side. Mapping more than one performance over a time scale to illustrate the difference of outcomes, I leverage animation to drive home the dynamic nature of the change, which makes for a more persuasive argument. Pie charts. Pie charts feel like one of the first types of graphs we learn about in school, and as a result are one of the types that are most often used in presentations as a concept is understood widely. When this format supports the message, it's a fast way to communicate understanding, but it can be overused, whether by having charts that try to show too many things or that all look the same. In the examples above, I've used pies for visualizing the percentage of things and provide a definition of that percentage below. Aligning with each project's visual identity, I've applied different visual treatments, such as the donut chart on the left or the solid pie on the right, and added animation to support the presenter's pacing, allowing them to reveal each metric in time so the audience understands the progression. Comparisons. Comparing between two or more things is an essential part of the decision-making process, and knowing how to visually lead your audience to the key differences makes all the difference. By changing font weight and color saturation for the data that's most important, I make it easy to understand and appreciate the differences that will make for an informed decision. Roadmaps. Clients have plans, and they need to communicate them to their orgs, their partners, and their customers. Sometimes those plans are straightforward and high level, such as the slide on the left. Sometimes they're more complex, involving multiple teams with overlapping activities, such as the center slide. Sometimes they have recursive processes. The slide on the right illustrates the service life cycle above and how the coming fiscal year aligns to that. Planning. Who does what and when is a question organizations face constantly, whether it's a geographic distribution of services, as in the slide on the left, or a readiness approach spanning multiple roles across several organizations and success metrics, as illustrated on the right side slide. Organizations are always evolving, with teams changing their rosters. People want to know who they're working with, where they're located, and what they're saying. The slide on the left identifies the team leader, their directs and their areas of responsibility, and the partners they work with. The slide on the right is one of many formats I've developed in which you want a number of quotes to support your argument. Clients are regularly orienting their teams and customers to net new processes. My goal is to uncomplicate the complex. Reduce the noise so that the audience can focus on that critical path that represents 80% of their experience in the process. I work with the subject matter expert to ensure that what is illustrated here is accurate, as it's often different from what they've handed me. It's a balancing act to encompass a process in a way that gives the information room to breathe, and yet is complete enough to be accurate. The center slide is such an example. We needed to call out the multi-step phases and points of recursion in order to be authentic to the core process.